I never once mentioned anything about separating your roots, but you keep asking me, so let's do this. This is your typical garden center Monstera, and I'm counting maybe 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 stems in this pot. So what does it actually take to separate it? Let's see. The main reason why I have never told anyone to separate their roots on my channel is because in general, it's very messy. It takes a super long time depending on how old the plant is, and for a beginner who has never done this before, might be biting off more than they can chew. Another reason why I don't personally recommend doing this is because depending on what your roots look like, it can be a beginner exercise or an expert exercise. Sometimes you might get lucky and your roots look like this. Other times, your roots might look like this. Good luck separating these, for real. Always a good idea to have a chopstick with you. Once you get down to the core of the root ball, it can make things a lot easier to get at. And surprise, surprise, we have a death plug. I thought this was going to be easy mode, but this has made things much more complicated. The reason why they're called death plugs is because people love to blame their plants dying on plugs like this, but really, it's not the plug, it's you. It's usually you. Generally, these plugs are made out of fabric. Sometimes they can be plastic, but if your roots have already made it through the death plug, it's not going to have any effect on your plant. The roots are absorbing water and nutrients through the soil, through the plug, into the plant, so you can basically pretend it's not there. But when you are separating the plant, it has to get removed. Now with the death plug out, we are almost at the base of our plant. So that wasn't too bad, could have been a lot worse, and we have our 4 plants. 1, 2, 3, and this super tiny one, number 4. Here's the other issue with separating our plants. This pot was the perfect size for all 4 of these plants combined. Now it's not, we have an issue. The problem is now this pot is too big for each one of these plants individually. I do think that this largest one could probably get away with it if you're using a really great chunky soil mix, but otherwise these plants, way too big, definitely way too big. So potting them up individually in the same size pot is not going to work. So if your plan was to separate it and make everything individual pots, you have to go really, really small. This pot size might be appropriate for this one, but probably not appropriate for this one. This one, definitely not. By going with terracotta and even smaller, you could still run into issues with your smallest cuttings still being too big for this pot size. So maybe rearranging these plants so their back sides are all facing the same direction is the best option. First, let's find the back of the plant. Here's the back of this plant. You see the 2 roots are coming from this back side down here. If you flip it to face it forward, you'll notice that you see the front side of all of the petioles. This one here, backside is along here. Again, here's the front, and you see the front of the petioles. Here's the back here. As they get smaller, they get much harder to tell, but you can see that the growth direction is going this way. So that means that this is the back of the plant. And at the front, again, you can see the front side of the petioles. And lastly, our smallest one, this is the back. To put everything together, I need my climbing stake in here. I'll start with my largest cutting in the middle. I'll follow up with my smaller ones, backside, facing this way. Second smallest, backside, facing this way, and this one, backside, facing this way. Now everything is all together, and I'll just fill in the rest. Now when your plant is this small, you don't need to tie it perfectly. It pretty much just needs to be a little bit secure, and as it grows, it's going to grow into the pole, and you can work from there to make it even more stable as it goes. This plant is staked as good as it's going to get for now, considering the size of some of these cuttings. As it grows, it'll continue to be secured to the pole, and it should put out some great growth. For some reason, some of you wanted an actual update of what's happening in my tree fern fiber prop box, so here it is. I don't have a lot. Most of it is Peperomia hope. I do have a few cuttings of Monstera subpinnata. I have this Scindapsus exotica. I have a few Monstera pinnatipartitas that are going through a rehab, and I do have these cuttings of Monstera pinnatipartita that are doing just fine. They're in water, and I still have room to stick them inside the prop box. Seriously, I had no intentions of making an actual prop box video. I do know that most creators have one, and if that plant creator has been on the platform for any amount of time, they probably have more than one prop box video. They probably have 5 different prop box videos. So I didn't actually think that anyone needed to have another one for me. There's nothing anyone can add to a prop box video that is new. What I do like about tree fern fiber is that it comes off the roots very easily, and it can produce some pretty healthy roots. Is the increased cost worth switching over from sphagnum moss? Honestly, probably not. Am I going to stick with tree fern fiber over sphagnum moss? Yes, absolutely. Not necessarily because it's so much better than sphagnum moss, but I can be extremely patient when it comes to some things, but when it comes to taking sphagnum moss off of roots, I have none. This basically works the same as any other prop box. You put your plants in, you close it, it increases the temperature, it increases the humidity. You just have to make sure that if you are using these drawer dividers like I am, your plants don't stay in here forever, because eventually they will crawl into the gaps between the boards, which is fine. You can just remove the dividers and then put them back in when you're done. So I actually did try making a fluval stratum prop box, and the results were the root growth was just so-so, and as you can probably tell, managing the water levels was kind of a pain. Some plants put out really healthy roots. Some plants rotted really quickly. Seriously, just leave the fluval for the aquarium people. They've gone through enough. Yeah, this philodendron squamiferum has been in here for a long time. The growth from this plant was so weird. It's like a super rehab. I got it basically dead from a going out of business plant sale, and it's kind of recovered, still alive, so maybe sticking it in the tree fern fiber will help it out. I also had some Monstera Peru that I really fell out of love with, so if this has no roots, I'm very happy to chuck this plant. The last thing that was in here was this zebra plant that I also fell out of love with. If this has no roots, I don't really care. I still have the mother plant alive, and I have to really decide if I want to keep it or not. Great, philodendron Peru is still alive, so now I have to save this plant. I want this Peperomia hope to go on the plant shelf that's usually behind me. I'll take this Scindapsus exotica. I'll pot up this Monstera together. Squamiferum in Peru will go into my tree fern fiber prop box, and the rest can go in the garbage. I'm tired. I have a couple of these Cebu blue pothos cuttings, and I want to take a couple to experiment with how it might look on a moss pole. I want to have these root a little bit first, so I'm going to stick them straight into a water container for propagation, and it's going straight into the prop box as well. And the last question from Stephanie Selena says, hey, can you answer a question? Well,